If I ask you, what would you do if you were hurt by your friend today? Or what would you do if you were heartbroken? Well, I believe many people would become helpless, and we can only use time to wash away the scars. But the fact is that if we simply leave it all to time, it is very likely to cause us very long-lasting harm. And it may get better, or it may get worse, right? So we all know how to deal with physical injuries, but we know almost nothing about emotional injuries. Well, think about it. If a child, a 1-year-old child, if he faces failure and reacts like us adults, can he learn to walk? If he sits there and cries when he fails and says he will never walk again, this thing is too difficult, he can't stand it, right? He will never learn to walk. So the reason why children can learn to walk and learn to talk is because they face failure again and again. They are very optimistic and they will not be hurt by failure at all. But when we grow up, we are particularly vulnerable to failure. Once failure happens, you think, I can never do this again. I will never start a business again in my life. I'd better go back to work. Many people are like this, right? So the problem with failure is that our self-esteem will be frustrated, right? This is very common. The second is that you will develop a passive and helpless mentality. He feels that everything in life is determined by external conditions, not by me. Okay? And the third is that there will be a lot of anxiety and fear, because sometimes you have to face failure. You will be particularly anxious. Well, the fourth harm is that your failure will be projected onto your children. This is very scary. When a person has a feeling of failure in his heart and has been suppressed by failure for a long time, he will overreact when he sees his children fail. He will feel that you cannot fail, and he will exaggerate the child's failure. This will in turn make the child further sensitive to failure, and failure will be inherited, and the feeling of failure will be inherited. Because you are too afraid of failure, your child will not be able to accept any failure in the future, because you project it onto the child. Failure is equivalent to our cold, equivalent to the cold of our emotional system. Simple and small failures are okay. They will heal on their own. But if the failure becomes very serious, it will develop into pneumonia. If this long-term failure causes you to no longer be able to do this thing, it will develop into pneumonia. So you have to cure it when it is a cold. So let's go back to what we said about inferiority. Inferiority is equivalent to our immune system disease. When you have serious inferiority complex, you will find that your immune system has problems, and your emotional regulation will have comprehensive problems. Many people have asked this question, saying that I was born with inferiority complex. What should I do? No one is born with inferiority complex. Inferiority complex may be related to the harm we suffered in childhood or earlier. So inferiority complex will cause our external reaction to become worse, and our ability to face pressure will become lower. Okay, then inferiority complex will make us resist positive feedback. So if you want to help a friend with low self-esteem, it is useless to simply praise him. You suddenly rush over and say you are awesome, you are an amazing person. This is useless. It will not make him feel less inferior, because people with low self-esteem reject positive feedback. Okay, people with serious low self-esteem will extremely reject positive feedback. Well, there are even many people who do that kind of exercise, such as hypnosis at night, play a recording to themselves at night, and then after falling asleep, play the recording saying, you are awesome, you are amazing, you are very, very good, you are the best person in the world. After a long time, this kind of people, inferiority will become more serious. So the method of chicken soup for the soul is really problematic sometimes. Some people also say to wear a hat, which is very interesting. Wearing a very expensive hat every night when you go to bed will improve your self-esteem. Buy a hat worth 20,000 yuan, wear it every night when you go to bed, and your self-esteem will improve the next day. This is nonsense and useless, but many people really believe it, but you will find that it has no effect. Then the problem that inferiority complex will bring is giving up fighting for some deserved benefits. If you bully an inferior person, he will say, okay, forget it, just bear with it. Then others don't give you money, they don't give it to you, it doesn't matter. You see, because he has inferiority complex, he also gives up the benefits he should fight for, which will lead to more inferiority complex. He will think, why they always bully me. But he doesn't think about why he doesn't fight for it, right? Because he is no longer willing to fight for it. So how can we solve these problems of inferiority? Well, the first method is to do something called self-compassion. How to practice self-compassion? It is not about self-pity. Self-compassion is that you feel that you are very inferior, and then you replace the protagonist of your inferiority complex with someone else, such as your friend. And now you want to write a letter to tell him not to get out of this predicament like this. In the process of writing this letter, you are healing yourself. You are constantly treating your own illness. Okay? So you have to learn to change your perspective and comfort yourself in the same way you comfort others. This is the technique of self-compassion. Okay? And the second method is to list your 10 strengths. Take 2 pieces of white paper, one on this side and one on this side, and then list your 10 strengths on this piece of white paper. Then, after each strength, it is best to write an example to prove that there is something that proves that I have this, right? When writing, jot down negative thoughts on separate paper. Use first paper for positive thoughts and second paper for negative ones. After writing, crumple the negative paper and throw it away. Remind yourself of the positives often to rebuild confidence.